Hi everyone, I'll be releasing a Nintendo related video in the week before Christmas, but I thought I'd give you one Christmas related video by talking about a winter themed area in the 3D Zelda games, along with a few notable 2D winter themed areas as well. As much as I want to say that all these areas are Christmas themed, it's more just the fact that they contain ice or snow, rather than Christmas references such as Santa hats or something like that. I've not made this type of video in a while, so I'm excited to get into it. Let's do it. First of all, let's talk about a game that received critical acclaim upon release, and is widely considered the best Zelda game of all time, and to millions of people, the best video game of all time, period. Let's talk about The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Now this one was quite a hard one to pick a winter themed area for. None of the main areas in the game were really winter themed. There were elements of fire, water, earth and darkness, but nothing like snow. Until I remembered that the quest that opens up the water temple for the Hero of Time to explore. Let me stop with the teasing. Of course, I'm talking about the Ice Cavern. This is one of the game's many sub-areas that reward the player with items that some say aren't needed, and some definitely are needed. In this case, the item at the end of the mini-dungeon is definitely needed. The items are the iron boots, normal leather boots laced with a titanium-like metal. These keep the hero under the water. This actually makes the dungeon doable. Enough about the water temple and the items that allow you to traverse the waters though. The atmosphere set in the Ice Cavern is possibly one of the best atmospheres in the game in my opinion. The music's playing behind my voice right now, and some of you will know that music makes a dungeon, or mini dungeon in this case, stand out to me. And the music in this place is exactly why it's in this list. When the game came out, I'm almost certain that everybody would have agreed that it was one of the most magical pieces of music in gaming. And while we have moved on and there are some better tracks now, this was the best start to a magical winter feeling in a musical sense. But it isn't just the music that makes this area so good. This mini dungeon is most known for its absolute focus on the theming of ice. Puzzles and enemies all involve ice. The puzzles are especially challenging down to their ice nature and having to think ahead of time. Overall, the dungeon is magical on a first time through, or even during my 20th playthrough. I always love hunting for the blue flame to open up certain areas of the map by walking through this truly magical place. Next up is technically an entire game. Since I haven't played the game too much, I won't talk about it for too long, but some of you will know that the Oracle games house some of the coolest mechanics to date back then, and that's criminal considering they're probably the most underrated games in the series. But let's talk a little bit about the Oracle of Seasons. I don't think I'll have that much to talk about with this one anyway. When Link stands upon a log, the area around him can turn to snow. And while this isn't a specific area, it's possibly the exact definition of a winter themed area in a Zelda game. The music for the Oracle games also fits the snow fairly well. Yet of course it doesn't fit it quite as well as something like the Ice Cavern. Puzzles aren't as frequent as I'd like in this area alone, so some snow related puzzles would be nice rather than puzzles that just lead you to changing the seasons, but overall it's still a place I'd go to before Christmas in the Zelda world. Now we have quite a dire pick. To be honest, I think that no matter what I'd picked for this game, it would have been dire. Whether I'd have picked the Woodland Temple, the Southern Swamp, or Akarna Valley, it still would have felt the same. But even with Gorons looming around every corner and with their home being covered in a snow blizzard they couldn't possibly ever recover from, the Snowhead region is my pick for The Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. Obviously the music is fairly similar to that of Ocarina of Time. Both games were created within a short time span of each other, and that's clear to see. The Ice Cavern's music and snowy peaks of Majora's Mask have an eerily similar feel about them. They would feel the exact same, however, there are those sinister notes that play in every single track in Majora's Mask soundtrack, letting you know that Majora is watching your every move. Letting you know that Majora and the Skull Kid are always a threat, and while I'd love to say that this is the most Christmas themed place on the list, I couldn't with good heart. Snowhead, like many other places in this game, is downright depressing at times, with Gorons freezing out in the cold, a baby crying at all Gorons present in the inside, and notably only safe area in the mountains, and that's without mentioning the death of the strongest of all the Gorons in Termina, Darmani III. The atmosphere is a great one, even if it doesn't resemble exactly what we like about winter as we've grown to like the snow and pray for it for Christmas every year. I think that it shows us the darker side of the snow, of the cold. It shows us a more dastardly section of the season, and that's pretty much all the game did with all of its locales. Now Wind Waker was a hard one to pick from. Those of you who have played it will know that there aren't many winter themed places, and really the most that reminded me of the cold and of winter in the main game was probably the Earth Temple. But even the Earth Temple was cold in a stone cold sort of way. so I'm going to keep the theme of this video going. Here, let me briefly talk about the Ice Rink Isle. I've seen a few theories that speculate that Ice Rink Isle is actually the Ice Cavern after years of being untouched, and it would make sense on the surface down to it being the location that you acquire the Iron Boots in Wind Waker, but I shan't go into the specifics of that theory today. Instead, I'd like to just talk about the island. As already discussed, the island houses the Iron Boots, and another chest outside of the giant stone head that invites you into its mouth with terrifying eyes. The ice scatters Link around, sometimes making his legs so hard to control that he even falls to the ground. As you make your way into the statue's mouth, you spot the chest that you've been looking for. You climb some ice and fall down a Mario-like slide to get to it. Then and only then can you walk through the path blocked by a gust of wind. The boots keep you locked to the ground, and Link makes his way out, jumping over sub-0 degree water yet again. While I feel like Wind Waker should have had a much greater push on its winter themed areas, I can't deny that Ice Rink Isle was at the very least a nice addition. And I would have been much sadder if it didn't have a winter themed area at all, like one of the later games. Twilight Princess, possibly my favourite game in the series, or at the very least in my top 2. Oh, how I love this game. And in fact, remembering the winter themed areas in this game pushed me over the edge for having this as my final Zelda video before Christmas. Snow Peak Ruins is almost the perfect in-between for the tight, uplifting feel of the Ice Cavern and the loose, eerie and scary feeling of Snowhead. Where to start with Snow Peak? A giant Yeti-like creature has been disturbing residents who take the walk up to Snow Peak quite heavily recently. Nobody has seen them, but there seems to be pretty strict and factual evidence behind it. So Link, the hero of Twilight, takes the walk up Snow Peak himself. He knows in his heart that no matter what he finds up that mountain, there must be something related to the Mirror of Twilight. So with courage on his hand and with heart in his chest, he starts the climb. The blizzard begins to grow, structures becoming harder to climb. Link uses his wolf self to climb these surfaces and spots a huge creature in the distance. As he drops closer, he meets friendly eyes. With the power of not speaking, the creature invites Link to follow him down the mountain in a surfing-like minigame. The music in the background supplementing the surfing gameplay, calm and atmospheric. Now I'd love to talk about the dreaded dungeon Snow Peak Ruins a little bit more, but I will say that the music is the most atmospheric in the series up until Breath of the Wild in my opinion. And as I've said for a few places in this list, this place is magical. Winter is supposed to be magical, but instead of being nice or downright dire, Snow Peak strikes a beautiful in-between that makes winter magical, but still keeps the player to the ground. Now I thought I'd pair these two games together, as it only seems right. The atmosphere in these dungeons aren't really there as the plain dungeon theme is used, but the Isle of Frost and Snow Sanctuary in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks respectively are still very nice additions. And they obviously beat not having a winter area at all. I like dungeons in these games, but they never left me feeling magical like some of the others, but that's just preference. However, the coolest thing is how the Isle of Frost introduced a new race into the Great Seas. They were called the Anuki. They roam around in a town and they're shrouded in snow and mystery. They drive home that winter can be cold and scary, but can also be happy and can set a tone amazingly. I don't think there's much more to talk about here, but there's that. Now I was thinking back to my playthrough of Skyward Sword and I noticed that there's no true area that really has a winter vibe to it, which kinda saddens me greatly, as I feel that snow in that game's art style would have been amazing, but I digress. I just thought I'd say this since every other 3D Zelda game has this sort of area. Now the final 2D game on this list is A Link Between Worlds. This is one of my favourite 2D adventures Link has been on, but I still think they could do better jobs on winter themed areas in future. But the Ice Ruins is the peak of a winter themed area in a 2D Zelda game to date in my opinion. The music is atmospheric and engrosses a sense of dread and magic to you, while still pushing the hero to move along and to stop the dreaded Yuga. The dungeon itself is a good one. The best thing about A Link Between Worlds was its dungeon design in my opinion, so it's no surprise that I think that this dungeon is amazing. While platforms move around you and while you move up and down on these platforms, the dungeon never stops feeling magical. Ice is present on the floors and snowflakes make up the bulk of the on-ground texturing. Overall, this dungeon is my number one winter happy place while still feeling somewhat eerie in Link Between Worlds. I think that literally everybody in the entire world who's played Breath of the Wild saw this one coming, but when I talk about winter in Breath of the Wild, I'm obviously talking about the Gerudo Highlands or Hebra Peak, and I just think that Hebra Peak is 100% better than the Gerudo Highlands. The music is spectacular. I listen to this music when I want to relax. I actually love just listening to it. I know I've said it for a lot of the music in this video, but the track is downright enchanting. All music in Zelda has somewhat felt, kinda eerie to an extent, but this takes it to a new level. Hebra Peak takes the main premise from Snow Peak and Twilight Princess and absolutely nails it. The first time I ever explored the Hebra region, I set myself at the top of Hebra Peak the mountain that a divine beast could have shot straight through, and took my Hylian shield in hand and flew down the mountain, shield surfing at immense speeds. Not to mention that I've never seen a winter area so fully realised. While exploring, snow blocks your way, and even huge blocks of ice obstruct the path to shrines. One of the coolest puzzles in Breath of the Wild is the one where you have to push a snowball down a mountain to grow the snowball and ultimately break a door open. The physics in Breath of the Wild were amazing, but it goes without saying that Hebra Peak is the best in this game by far. Oh, of course, one final thing. The Great Skeleton solidifies that this place is truly magical, and when I walk around the world of Hyrule, this is one of my go-to places. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, then please subscribe and leave a like rating. If you'd like to join these amazing people on screen, then check out my Patreon in the description. Any amount of money helps me to pay for better recording gear, so thank you if you do decide to. Of course, you get some perks yourselves as well. Along with that, my other social medias are also in the description. I bid you all farewell, and I hope you have an amazing Christmas period if you choose not to watch or listen to my video in the week. Thanks for watching one last time, and I hope to see you all next week at least. Stay safe.